Have you ever bought or played a Gibson and wondered why it wouldn't stay in tune no matter what you did? Perfect. Let's jump in and talk about why. So I've got these two SGs here. The first one is an SG Special with soap bar P90s and a compensated wraparound bridge. This bridge is stock. I didn't add it to it. It's how it came. Pretty cool bridge for a stock bridge. More common in the 50s than it is now. We kind of got away from that technology, started adding more pieces, but it's still a cool piece. And then this is the SG Standard with humbuckers and the pretty common tune-o-matic bridge. So two very different approaches to how the bridges are made, the hardware is used, which also means two very different responses from the guitars and how it is they react to your playing, the environment, etc. So when I got them, I noticed that I just couldn't keep them in tune, no matter what I did. It was really frustrating, obviously, getting two new guitars and not being able to keep them in tune and play them. It was just a fight. So I started wondering, like, what can I do to make this experience better so that I can play them? So after digging around on the internet, and the countless threads that blamed Gibson quality control, or the countless threads that said, you know, go buy X and it'll fix the issue, I decided that was clearly not the best route, and I wanted to talk to a professional. Anyways, I thought the best thing that I could do besides surfing the internet was to take the guitars to Luthier and figure out everything I could about why these guitars weren't staying in tune. To my surprise, the Luthier didn't blame Gibson. And that's really surprising when you're used to reading all of these countless threads saying quality control, Norland era, Henry, whatever the reasoning is. There's all of these things, that are really, really common. But the Luthier, who very easily could have said, yeah, this is why it's Gibson, didn't say that. And I was pretty shocked by that because I've heard it enough times to know that it was a likelihood that he would answer that. But instead, he gave a lot of information. I mean, a lot. This was almost an hour-long conversation that he and I had that I was able to distill down to about 15 minutes. He explains, like, hey, here's the environment, the literal environment that's causing this to happen. And here's how you're playing that's causing that to happen. Here's why when you do this, that occurs. And that was great because it all of a sudden brought this entirely new life to how I'm playing the guitar and how the guitar is, quite literally responding to me and my playing. And that was cool because it was no longer about blaming Gibson or the guitar, but about realizing how much goes into playing the guitar. So that said, I went back to my friends at Dusty Strings Music here in Seattle and Fremont. I say again because in my last video with the 335, 345, 355 comparison, they invited me in, let me look at the 345, play with some stuff. It was great. So I called John, said, hey, can I come in and talk to you about this, see why it is that these guitars won't stay in tune and interview you through this process? And he said, absolutely, come on in. So John is going to tell us why your Gibson is likely not staying in tune, how to remedy that, and he's also, as a gimme, going to teach you how to string up your guitar in a way that's locking, but not having to buy anything extra, not having to go out, get any extra tools to make that thing more stable. You notice I'm not saying who it is because I DM'd them and they didn't contact me back. So nothing extra, you can do it right there in front of you. New set of strings, boom, locks up. It's absolutely awesome. So thanks, John, for all of your help on that. As a quick side note, I do all of these videos by myself, so the first few minutes of the video interview is a little because it was out of focus, unfortunately. I didn't realize that at the time, and I also didn't reshoot when I did realize it. So bear with me for the first few minutes. It's a little rough, but it gets way better. And also, we are in a live music shop. People are coming in, looking at guitars, socially distanced, of course. And there's a little bit of background noise, so be patient with that because it does get better. Anyways, if you ever had trouble keeping your Gibson in tune, then this video is for you. Let's jump in. So let me ask the first question.
Sure.
Why won't my SG stay in tune?
It revolves around a bunch of things. So after we eliminate the obvious adjustments that would allow it to stay in tune, then almost everything that relates to it is either wear and tear or player related, in my experience. So the reason it won't stay in tune or play in tune has maybe more to do with how it's being used as opposed to its native state as a guitar.
It's my fault.
The player has something to do with it, always.
Totally. Right, that makes
Always.
sense. Yeah, I get that. So I'm a drummer first, and I tend to get heavy-handed, just, you know, subconsciously. And I find when I really get into something, I'm tuning more than when I'm pulling back and just thinking and being aware of how intense my playing is.
Well, and one thing that comes into play, and it may have been discussed before, or you may be aware of it already, when a guitar comes out of the case, it's cold.
Yeah.
When you touch the strings, they relax and need to be retuned. So when it comes up to temperature, it usually gets more stable. One of the factors with Gibson guitars as a group is that they're short, relatively.
Yeah.
So those 10 gauge strings are not in any way resilient. They're very easy to bend.
Right.
And so when you grip hard, when you get into it, you're bending the strings just by holding a chord.
Right.
And so it can't play in tune, even if it was in tune.
Right.
Because you're causing that situation. The player will often cause the situation where it doesn't mesh.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now that I know part of the issue is me, should I get my guitar set up?
You should, and one of the things that involves, that's a question that needs to be answered before it can be set up, is what strings do you think you want to use? There's not a right or wrong answer here, but given what you've said, you probably want to lean toward heavier strings.
Yeah, okay.
Because they're harder to pull out of tune.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But at a certain point, you start to feel it.
Right.
And it does affect the tone as an overall thing. So you kind of have to prioritize what matters the most.
What all does a setup look like?
Tune it up to the tuning the customer, the player is going to be using. You adjust the truss rod. Should I explain what it is?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
They can Google it.
For those strings. Those strings.
Okay.
But, so you string it up, stretch the strings. That's important.
Yeah.
And it's just a manual thing. Adjust the truss rod for the string tension that you have. And then finally adjust the bridge so that the string, when fretted at the 12th fret, is exactly an octave higher than the open note.
Got it.
And then you've done everything that the guitar has to offer to maximize the chance that it'll play in tune.
Yeah, okay. So along with that, how frequently should I get my guitar set up?
It usually revolves around whether you notice something that's changed and you don't like the change.
Interesting.
It's not like an oil change on a car, because the guitar can operate for 50 years with no setup.
Yeah.
So there's environmental circumstances and wear and tear.
Right.
But if it changes in a way that displeases you, you should have it checked out at the very least to see if a setup can help that.
Sure.
But there's no way to really put a schedule on it.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
But if you change the string gauge because you want to experiment, it probably needs to be at least minimally set up again.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. What are some ways that I can care for my guitar at home that will help maintain better tuning stability?
The first and foremost thing is to stay aware of how old your strings are.
Yeah, right.
And if something has changed or it's become less stable or anything, change the strings.
Yeah, change the strings, right.
And then decide if there's an issue. Beyond that, wipe the guitar off after you play it.
Yeah, sure, the oils and stuff.
And if you have any sense whatsoever that the fingerboard is dry and you will feel it.
Right.
Get a good grade of oil. People use lemon oil, even nut oil, walnut oil, or something like that. And oil the fingerboard, let it set for an hour or two, and wipe off whatever is left. But usually you only have to do that every 10 years or so.
Sure. Oh, you only have to oil it every 10 years?
Or so.
Interesting.
Unless you live in the desert.
Right.
Or you live in a house that uses a heat source that dries the air like a wood fire.
Okay. As a quick heads up, we are in a guitar store. This is a real place. This is not a set, so if you hear stuff in the background, it's folks checking out guitars. Is there any one thing you want everyone to know about maintaining their guitar?
If there's any issue whatsoever that strikes you, change the strings.
Yeah.
Even expensive strings are not that expensive.
Yeah.
Body chemistry controls that a bit, so it's unique to you. Beyond that, if it feels like the guitar is harder to play than you want it to be, it's important to go ask someone if that's true.
Sure.
If it's not right,
Yeah.
and you think it's you.
Yeah.
Don't always assume it's you, regardless of your experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. There are some pieces to the Gibson, the SG, the 335, all the different Gibson models that are obviously made differently. You mentioned the scale earlier. The scales tend to be shorter. Is there anything within the Gibson models that tends to emphasize or exacerbate some of the tuning issues in Gibson that you wouldn't find in other guitar models?
To some degree, yes. And so it starts with the scale being shorter, which means based on a string gauge that you like.
Right.
If you have a guitar that's based on what Fender does, whatever version,
Right.
as opposed to generally what Gibson does, those 10s on the Fender are stiffer, so they're less likely to go out of tune.
Interesting.
And then also because the wire is taller from the fretboard, it's easier to press the string farther if you grip hard.
Yep.
So those things, along with the short scale length, can cause them to be more problematic.
Right.
Or the kind of maintenance that they need becomes more important.
Yeah.
Fret dressing, fret replacement.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's super helpful. So it's interesting because, there are certainly pieces of it, based on what you're saying, there are pieces of it that might emphasize some of those, but it's not necessarily just because it's a Gibson. No. Just because it's an Ibanez, just because it's a Fender.
No, I think it's safe to say that pretty much any guitar brand that you've heard of, most of the things that would keep the tuning stable are already in place.
Yeah.
But then you have to factor in the user, wear and tear, and how often all of that comes as a need is completely controlled by the way it's used.
Yeah, totally. Makes sense. Okay, so one of the last pieces is talking about the how the strings are actually strung and how they adhere to or lock to the actual tuning machine, right?
Yes.
So John's gonna walk us through the process, show us how it works. We're gonna do it on an Epiphone first, and we're gonna start there. Let me swap you.
Yeah.
Don't mind. It's an Epi LP, All right, show me what you got.
So we've got a set of 10s, which is always a good place to start on a Gibson, I think. So this happens to have a thing called a stop tailpiece. The tailpiece part is made easier for us. I guess one of the things to mention is, of course, all Gibsons are not short scale.
Right.
And all Fenders are not long scale.
Right.
And all of the children of those guitars also have varying scale lengths.
Correct.
And lots of other factors that make it more variable.
Right.
So it's hard to find a general truth to anything.
Totally.
But if strings are old, they won't play in tune. That's for sure a truth.
Right. When you had kind of talked about that a little bit, like getting your guitar set up for the sound that you like from the strings.
Yeah.
So if you like a new string, get it set up for a new string. If you like the sound of old strings,
then you have to wait however long old qualifies as.
And then get it set up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is a pathway of frustration. So be prepared.
So deeply subjective.
So this is the normal way of putting a string on that minimizes the chance it'll slip.
Yeah.
And over time we have learned that that's about how much string you need. And so you put the string through the hole in the tuner once,
Right.
pull it toward the top of the peg head,
Yeah.
bring it back around under, come this way, pull the string down into a straight line, and bring the string back around to make this little loop. Always wind the strings so that they move down toward the peg head
Okay.
and not on top of themselves.
Sure, right. That makes sense.
So we'll do it again.
Okay, so through.
About that much. You're not pulling hard here.
Right.
Up toward the top,
Yep.
back around
Under it.
and make a loop.
Oh, I see. Oh, so, okay, perfect. Hang right there. That makes way more sense.
But the thing here, so right now you could pull this back out,
Yeah.
but if you wind it that much,
Yeah, it grabs it. That's great. So it kind of locks it without a locking tuner.
right. Locking tuners work great
Sure.
if you want to make that upgrade, but so does this. So we'll do it again.
Yep. All right, so he's gonna go under, right here. Goes under, yep. He pulls the string tight and he goes back over the top.
It's probably easier to see.
It's
'cause
so much
bigger.
easier to see on the side and the big string too, yeah.
Yeah. And
All right.
And that's it.
And now you just take it and you tighten it up. That's it.
And that's it.
There it is. Now you know. It's not just Gibson. It's so many factors. It's the strings that you've chosen for your particular scale length. It's the height of your frets. It's the width of the neck. It's the width of the fret. It's the wear. It's the tear. It's how your body chemistry. If you're a sweaty person who produces lots of sweat, it's going to interact with the strings, how you strung your guitar up, if you overlapped it and there was more breakage opportunity based on how you wrapped it. There's so many different pieces of this, and it's not just simply that Gibson doesn't know how to build a guitar, but it's that maybe you don't know how to play the guitar as well as you think you do. That was the big shocker for me. I'm not trying to like place any blame. I'm actually like acknowledging that for myself. I pressed really hard and I came from Fenders. And because there were so many differences between those two guitars, I could really beat the crap out of a Fender and I didn't have to finesse it. Where when I play my Gibsons, I have to kind of slow down, pull back and not hit so hard and not be as aggressive. And that was very much a contributing factor for me when transferring over, realizing, hey, it's about context, what you're playing and how you're playing and how excited you are and so on. I hope that this video has been helpful for you. Please check out Dusty Strings music. They sell on Reverb, they sell on their website, they sell everywhere. If you're here in Seattle, go check them out. They're currently by appointment only, but you can still go in and see everything that they carry. Really great people, really great selection as well for acoustics and electrics. Thanks so much, you guys, Dustys, for allowing me to come in, interview John, and go through that process. John, thanks so much. It was super helpful knowing more about why it is that my guitar likes to fight me the way that it does. If this video was helpful for you, please click the like button and please consider subscribing. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.